attendees. Hey, Alicia. Hey, Adam. Hey, Eric Wills. Hey, Robert. Tilla, welcome. If you're here for the Gig Economy Onward Career Tour, you are in the right place. Hey, Robert. Hey, Tina Hayes.
Tina.
Hey, Tessa. Hey, Webb Sussman. Thanks for making it out. We're just going to give everybody a minute longer. Hey, Ellie, to join us. While you guys are getting comfortable, take a look at the poll that we have up. And we'll get started here in just a 30 seconds more for the Onward Career Tour on the gig economy. Okay, we've got a lot of people joining us. Heidi, welcome. Good to see you're on as well. All right, hey, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt Sayer, Managing Director of Onward Eugene. Onward Eugene is an economic development nonprofit. We're focused on increasing economic prosperity and making sure that that prosperity is inclusive. I'm a U of O graduate myself. My degree is in economics. I have minors in business and geography. I'm going to be your tour guide for the next hour. And that tour is an Onward Career Tour, which is an interactive experience that enables students and businesses and a lot of great other folks to meet from where they are. And today, I think a lot of us are at home. So this program introduces students at no cost to a variety of careers and companies that have a presence in the broader Eugene, Oregon area. And this event is a series, and it's produced in partnership with the University of Oregon Career Center. And I'm joined here today with Holly Tate. Holly, you want to say hi?
Hi, my name is Holly Tate, and I am a jobs and internship developer for the Career Center. I focused on helping students find jobs and internships here in Eugene, Springfield.
And you are very good at that. So one last housekeeping item before I kick it over to our guest today. We'll be using the QA feature, which is down in the bottom towards the left side. That's where you can ask your question, ask as many questions as you like. We'll answer them throughout the program. And then we'll also have a dedicated QA section towards the end. So with that, I'm very excited to be here today with an all-star panel. And we're talking gig economy through multiple lenses. Hey, everyone. Caroline, why don't you go ahead and kick us off, introduce yourself, and talk about the world that you know.
I would love to. Thank you, Matt. Well, hello, everybody. I really appreciate you guys joining us, especially when there's like a glimmer of sunshine coming through. So thanks for taking time to learn about what all of us panelists are doing and career opportunities for you all. My name is Caroline Cummings. I have a business called Vero Ventures. And Vero Ventures is a consulting business that takes on multiple gigs. My biggest gig right now is with Oregon Rain, which is a nonprofit that exists to really build prosperous entrepreneurial economies. And we do that by partnering with small and rural communities in Oregon and beyond. We only go where we're invited, which is really important, especially in economic development. You don't want to be just sort of parachuting into a community and say, I'm from the city, I know how to help you, rural Oregon. No one wants to experience that. But basically what we do is I hire a bunch of gig economy workers. Everybody on my team is an entrepreneur, and some of them are part-time, some of them are full-time. And as a full-time entrepreneur, it means you probably have 3 full-time gigs that you're working on because you really know how to manage multiple tasks. You don't work 9 to 5, you don't take your lunch at noon. You just sort of do whatever it takes. So that's who we are. And I can tell you more about my background when we get to that portion, but thank you all for being here.
Hey, before you introduce yourself, Sarah, hey, Holly, do you want to share the results of our poll?
I saw the poll pop up. I don't know if everybody else saw it.
Yeah, so going back to our initial poll, it was just a way for us to kind of understand what's most important to our audience here today to make sure that you're getting the most out of this interactive experience. And it definitely seemed that most people were interested in learning more about the work that you're doing, what it looks like to be an entrepreneur and a freelancer here in our city. Um, and the other thing is just kind of a general interest in learning more about different career opportunities here in our community. I know a lot of students are really interested in making a home here in Eugene and Springfield, and so just understanding what the breadth of our city has to offer to them.
Thanks. Sarah, how are you?
Hello, everyone. So, hi, thank you so much for attending. My name is Sarah Koski, and I am considered an independent contractor. So, I graduated from the University of Oregon in 2006 with the goal of going to Columbia University, doing law school and working for the United Nations. However, I could not pass the LSAT and was looking for something to do in the meantime while I studied, and got a job directly with the University of Oregon doing major gift fundraising for the Clark Honors College. And it transferred into several different jobs with the university, and I really learned how much I loved philanthropy, fundraising, event planning, all sorts of odds and ends of marketing and communications. And then I transitioned from there into large-scale event planning for the International Society for Technology and Education, owned my own consultancy for a little bit, worked with the American Red Cross, and then after working with the Red Cross for a season, I went back to consulting to do small project gigs anywhere between 6 months to a year. What I really liked about the work that I'm doing right now is that I've been able to work the majority of my time remote from Eugene, Oregon. A lot of my gigs are in different time zones, either Berlin, London. Right now I'm working in New Delhi. And so it's a stretch to work in the different time zones, but there's nothing like staying in Eugene.
You can't hear me right now. Hey, Eric, how are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this and for everyone for tuning in. My name's Eric Braman. I'm the Arts Education Program Manager with Lane Arts Council. We are an organization with our office based out of Eugene, but we serve all of Lane County. And our mission is to cultivate strong and creative arts communities through arts experiences, supporting artists and arts education, kind of as our big pieces. We have 5 pillars that we're really focused on in our strategic plan, and that includes education, which is the area that I most oversee. And in that position, I support a roster of around 45 teaching artists that are all contractors in our community. Some of them are completely brand new to the world of contract work, and some of them have been in it for 30, 40 years at this point. So I've worked with our people across the spectrum in the realm of their relationship to contract and gig working. We also focus in on experiences. So if you ever heard of the First Friday Art Walk in Eugene, Lane Arts Council puts that on. It's another thing that works with a lot of gig contractors from across the community. Also, other experiences we do include Fiesta Cultural, which is a celebration of Latinx culture, community, and experiences. We also collaborate on Visual Arts Week. We work with Springfield to do mural tours. There's a lot of different kind of pieces that fall into that experiences piece as well. We also support artists with artist workshops, and that's working with all contractors essentially are coming in for those workshops and really focusing on professional development for people interested in the arts and contract gigs there. And then leadership and partnership in leading and kind of supporting the creative sector of Eugene Springfield, which is really focusing in on honoring and appreciating and promoting the economic impact of the arts in our community. So those are 4 of our big pillars. Then the 5th one is development, which is really important for any nonprofit organization to have a strong hold in development to support all the work that they're doing. What draws me to the gig economy and what I love most about working with people who work in the gig economy is the creative possibility that exists within it, the ability to really paint the path that you want to lead. And also personally, as somebody who's working in schools and a lot of government agencies that have tons of red tape, contract and gig workers tends to be the way that we get around that red tape by handing it off to somebody else and saying, this is the expert, let them do their thing. And we're able to really access a lot of creativity in those spaces with a lot of intentional restrictions. to infuse creativity into those spaces. So yeah, glad to be here.
Thanks, Eric. I'm a huge fan of your organization, and I love First Friday Art Walk during the summer. Hey, Caroline, you're from Philly.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about Eugene and Springfield, and why is it such a great place to live, work, and play?
Yeah, you know, when I moved here 15 years ago from Philadelphia, I thought, gosh, I'm going to miss access to so many different cultural experiences and fashion and food and being able to hop on the train and being in New York City or in Boston or, you know, DC. But what I don't miss is the traffic, that's for sure. What I love about Eugene and Springfield is within an hour, I can be at the beach, I can be at the mountains, I can be on a river, I could be, you know, exploring different parks. And then within 2 hours, whether it's a drive to Portland or a flight, I could be in Seattle and San Francisco. So I still have that direct connection to metro areas because I do feel like in my heart of hearts, I'm a city girl and I miss that. But in Eugene, I get to park in front of the restaurant or the place that I'm going to, at least hopefully when they're open, right? I mean, we just got the news today that Lane County is going to be opening again, which is really amazing. So I really love that. From a business perspective, I feel like you can be a big fish in a small pond. And if I wasn't from Philly or the New York area, I wouldn't know that Eugene was a small pond. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. I mean that in you can be 1 degree of separation from anybody, not just in Eugene, Springfield, but in Oregon. So just between the panelists and the folks that are on this call right here, if you went on LinkedIn and you looked someone up and you said, I would love to work for this company or that company, I bet you one of us would have a direct connection to that person or know someone who has that connection. And one of the biggest things that you can do while you're in the Eugene Springfield area is do that. Look up who you would love to work with or for, whether it's in the gig economy or if it's a full-time position, and then reach out to them, especially now while we're all at home working on Zoom, and say, could I schedule a 15-20 minute information interview with you? I'd love to hear your story. People love to talk about themselves. And so ask them what they did to get to where they are. And now you're making that connection. So I think that's really much easier to do in the Eugene Springfield area than anywhere else that I've lived.
Thanks, Caroline. There is a lot to like. How about you, Sarah?
It's really interesting in my career. So coming from the Honors College, I was one of the only Honors College students outside of Hannah Bontrager of Ballet Fantastique that stayed in town. There may be a couple others, and everybody went abroad, they went traveling, they went to large cities, Los Angeles. And to be honest, in my first couple years of working, I thought I was missing out. Like I thought that I was missing, like Caroline was saying, you know, those big theater productions and the fashion and everything like that. But what I realized and what I really like about Eugene, and I think Eric can speak to this too, is the fact that we are a hotbed of innovation and ingenuity, right? Like, because we contain this pioneering spirit, you know, the Oregon Trail, and we all played that game, right? But we are the ancestors of those who literally were the risk takers to forge new territories to come to the Pacific Northwest. So that pioneering spirit, I think, is still here in the sense that there's nothing that I can do in the type of risks that I take here. And like Caroline says, we have the ability to connect in ways that I can't in a large city. And, you know, there is so many different odds and ends of groups. You know, you have like these world-class track athletes that you could like run into. You have like these eco people that live in communes still that are like doing like major primal like earthy things, and you have this dichotomy, right? And it's so amazing because you can't get that anywhere else in the world. And I was actually talking to a woman on the East Coast the other day, and she was like, I wish I lived in Eugene. And she was in South Carolina. And I was like, why? She's, you know, like Tracktown USA, all these different things. And people are hearing about Eugene in a way that I wasn't even recognizing. And so to stay here and just hold my ground and say, this is where I love to be, has actually been a blessing.
Thanks, Sarah. Sometimes when I recruit companies to the region, they like, oh, well, I'm gonna have to do a connecting flight. And so I tell them, I'm like, it used to be way harder to get here. You had to come by trail. So anyway, hey, Eric, how about you?
Yeah, I want to definitely add on to the creative potential that just exists in our community. I think one of the things that I really love, in addition to this creative spirit that exists in our community, is also the realm towards community and collaboration. There is no space in the community where people work in silos. I constantly feel like I'm overlapping with business and independent artists and community collaborators and government. And, you know, granted, we're in the center of like the arts sphere at Lane Arts Council, but even as an independent artist who also goes out and works as a gig artist, I'm constantly overlapping with opportunities across the community. And collaboration is like, seems to be the name of the game when it comes to especially art making in the community. There is no arts organization that does, or artist specifically, that does anything on their own. They're always working with someone, an entity, or some initiative that really is community based. I think another piece is creative inspiration and empowerment. There, as an artist, so I have really stepped into my own as an artist in the community, as well as a poet, theater maker, and storyteller. And the number of people in the community who saw that I was interested in pursuing some of those art forms and immediately stepped and were up and were like, that's amazing, do it, you can do this, I believe in you. You know, I grew up in Michigan, and Chicago was the closest place to where we all went to kind of consume arts, and where I kind of was thinking about starting a career. And it's like it's a competitive environment. If you are somebody who is interested in doing something, there's 100 other people who want to do the exact same thing. And it's a competition to see who can do it best. And in Eugene, there is certainly competition, and that's a beautiful thing, but it's a collaborative competition. It's an encouraging competition. People are excited to see new people with skill sets pop up, because it becomes a new person they can work with to create and bring some of their own dreams alive. So I think that's something that I really love, is I've always felt loved and supported and encouraged as a creative in this community, because we're valued, deeply, deeply valued in this community. And then I just want to echo the nature piece. Like, this is the best place ever if you love nature. You're so close, and it's so inspirational and so inspiring, not just for the arts, but for everything. You know, we are such a granola in the most positive way of using that term, community. And it shows through in our creativity and our community mindedness.
Love it. Hey, attendees, just wanted to remind you about the Q&A button. If you have any questions at all, just load it in there, and we'll get your question answered. Hey, Holly, let's kick off our second poll. You want to tell us about it?
Sure. So one of the things, a lot of the people that are on attending today are going to be first-time job seekers, and really thinking about what's important to them and thinking about their future careers. And so we're asking just what are some of the things that are most valuable to you when you're thinking about what you want out of a future job experience or a future employer. And they'll give us some more stuff to talk about.
Love it. While we're waiting for that, Sarah, what are the top 3 skills that you see in people who are the most successful in sort of your neck of the woods in terms of gig economy?
So the top 3 skills in my neck of the woods in gig economy. So what's really interesting with my career is I basically forged what I wanted to do, right? And so as a consultant, so I started off in 100% philanthropy, meaning I was a fundraiser, right? And when you think about fundraising, you think going to the country clubs, sending out mailers, doing all these different things. And as a young individual working in this economy, I really stuck to the rules. You know, I learned from my elders. I gleaned as much as I could possibly glean from the experts ahead of me, right? But then when I transferred into event planning and then my own consultancy, I think the biggest thing that I learned is, first, you need to be a risk taker. I really like drawing inspiration from different things and different entities that not a lot of people see beauty or art in, right? And so in that sense, there's been a lot of times where boards of directors will be like, I don't want to use, for example, I worked on a project with the Volunteers in Medicine of our local branch in Lane County, and I put out an article on BuzzFeed with puppets, right? And so the board of directors was like, no puppets. And then I didn't even have the heart to tell them that my next project was 100% skateboard, right? They're like, how does medicine and skateboarding collaborate? But it worked. So I think risk-taking, having a little bit of an edge, be respectful of whoever you're working with, but stand your ground. If you have something that you really believe is a good idea, drive that idea home. If it doesn't work in the career field that you're working on, start volunteering or doing projects. My biggest recommendation for students, especially thinking about characteristics of students, if you have a characteristic that doesn't fit in your 9-to-5 job, find a nonprofit or an NGO that you can volunteer for and pour your passion into that. Work your job and then do 2 different things at once so you still feel creative. So risk-taking, having an edge, and I think being really open-minded and respectful. There's always going to be people who may not see the vision that you have. My vision is really out there a lot of times. Like, I'll pitch things and 2 years later, maybe it makes sense, right? So I'm always having to learn how to negotiate in the best sense where everybody feels respected instead of just like pushing through as this independent person. So all of those 3 really work together.
Thanks, Sarah. Hey, Holly, what do we got for poll results?
Yeah, so I think those are really fun answers. And thinking about what's important, the most answers came in this idea of opportunities for professional development. And thinking about that from a gig economy perspective, that probably looks a lot different because you don't necessarily always have an employer who's giving you a professional development fund or something. So you're kind of having to decide what's really important to you as an individual, which we should totally talk about. The other ideas were that employers' values align with mine. And so for you, getting to actually choose some of the projects and stuff that you're working on, thinking about, is that something that's important to you when you're choosing who you collaborate with? And lastly, the other one that was kind of rose to the top was this idea of opportunities for work-life balance. And so in kind of the remote world that we're living in, / being kind of a hustler, working in this gig economy where you could work 24 hours a day if you wanted to, how are you trying to find opportunities to create that balance in your life? So those are definitely some themes that are coming up, and we look forward to hearing your perspectives on that.
Thanks. Hey, Eric, I'm going to throw you a slight curveball. We got a question, and I think it probably lands with you the best. So Heidi, thanks so much for your question, which is, what platform should I make sure to maintain for employers to look at my capabilities? Instagrams, blog, portfolio? The portfolio part makes me think artist or creative and sort of in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, definitely. When we're looking at hiring teaching artists, the biggest thing that I'm looking at is a good presence of work. And that can come in a lot of different forms. And I really actually follow the artist's direction. However, if an artist doesn't have a presence at all, it's a huge warning sign for me. Websites actually tend to be one of the strongest formats for me that I've used for artists who are interested in working with us. Because you're able to really design it in a way that showcases your personality, but also showcases your work. And it can sometimes support video, audio, visual, and that's like such an important part of the art making process. But Instagram is definitely something for arts that's really exciting to be able to maintain, because it also, again, it shows your personality as a really exciting thing. I personally don't use LinkedIn tons, and that's probably a fault on me that it probably would be and I don't take this as advice to not get on LinkedIn. Get on LinkedIn, use it, because it is a professional network that works really effectively for people. I kind of fell out of that bandwagon, and I don't necessarily seek out artists on LinkedIn because that tends to be a space that artists don't go. And so that's why I really lean towards their websites and where they direct me, because I think that represents their art and their focus best. So it's really specific in the artist lens in response to that.
Thanks, Eric. Hey, Caroline, back to you. What are the top 3 skills you see in people who are the most successful entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I guess I think about, if you have ADHD, you're on. I think about when I was younger, if that diagnosis would have existed, I would have been labeled that. And if gig economy existed, I would have been labeled that, because I work this job, that job, this job, that. So think about like an analog version of a gig economy. And I share that because if you're an entrepreneur, if you're someone like me who doesn't feel settled ever, wherever you go, that wherever you go, you feel like you could come up with a better idea, you could challenge your bosses, but you don't want to because you feel like maybe you're too young or you haven't had enough experience doing that, then you're probably someone who has the skills to be an entrepreneur. Also being comfortable, being uncomfortable most of the time, those are some of the skills that you really need in order to be an entrepreneur. You have to be willing to be to do the things that people don't want to do, right? Because if starting a business was easy, everybody would do it. But the great thing about starting businesses now is you don't have to have millions and millions of dollars. You can just throw up an Instagram, you can do a YouTube channel, you can become an influencer, you could do a lot of different things. And my question for Heidi, I think it was, I would ask, what is it that you want to do? Because the platform is really going to be dependent upon that. Instagram is really great for artists. If you want to get into my world, in the entrepreneur world, you better have a good LinkedIn profile. You better be blogging. You better have a podcast. You better be doing tons of volunteer work. What Sarah talked about earlier, it's really important to get involved in causes and join boards, because when you're on a board, you learn about financials, and the weakest area most humans have, unless you're a CPA or you're in finance, most people don't know what a balance sheet is or a P&L or a cash flow. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, you better well know how to read financials, because the financials tell the entire story. You can have a great idea, but if you can't bring it to market, no one's willing to pay for it, it really doesn't matter. So those are some of the skills that I really think are important. And then lastly, you really have to have a stomach for failure. We have a saying that you scale fast or fail fast. And what I love about entrepreneurship is you have permission to fail. So we don't teach that in higher ed. We don't teach that in K-12. And I think that if there was one thing I could do to modify the curriculum in any university or K-12 scenario, would be to create classes where it's called failure, and you just talk about it and you make it comfortable, because it is a muscle that you have to learn how to work to be comfortable with. So those are the skills that I think are the most important.
Thank you. Hey, I've got a follow-up question for you. This one was anonymous. They ask, how many jobs on average do you all work? It sounds like a lot. How do you prevent creative burnout? How do you prevent burnout, Caroline? I would appreciate personally knowing the answer to this question from you.
It's funny, my husband just walked in and he would answer that differently. I feel because he sees me on this darn computer all the time. And sometimes I'll say to him, gosh, I feel like I worked a 10-hour day. He's like, no, you got up at 6, you were on till 10. I mean, these are like 14, 15-hour days. Here's the most important thing is, it's only burnout if it feels like burnout. I like to work in sprints, which means I like to work 3-4 days in a row, 12 hours a day, but then I want to take 3-4 days off. Now, that's my aspiration. Am I able to do that? Not all the time, especially during the COVID situation where we're helping entrepreneurs triage their businesses and keep them alive. But, for me, I have to just literally, if it's just 1 minute in the morning and 1 minute before I go to sleep, just to have an intentional thought, that really helps reduce my stress and reduce burnout. So those are some suggestions. For some people, they need to go run a mile. They need to get their heart rate up. They need to read a book. They need to do something totally different, watch a silly show on TV. Whatever it is, allow yourself to have that outlet, because if it recharges you, that's good. If it doesn't, then it's not a good outlet.
That's really good advice. Let's see. Do you want to go with a question? Holly, you haven't fed me one. Let me see. Okay. We're going to go back to our regular question set. Yeah. Let's go to you, Sarah. What are 3 things students could be doing now to make them a better candidate in your field?
Great question. So my recommendation is don't be scared to literally contact your muse. So I'm working with some young creatives right now who one of them, so both of our muses is the director of footwear for Versace, right? Like I find people on Instagram. So talking about platforms, and I'm going to go back to that. My top 3 platforms are Slack, right? Instagram and LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn for the connections. I live on Instagram for the creativity. It's where I hire or recruit 100% of my creative individuals. Nothing's done without me scoping out everything professional and private on your Instagram before I work with you. And then I think, so Matt, tell me the question again.
Sure. Well, what are things that students could be doing now to set them up for success this summer?
Reach high, reach for the stars. If there's somebody that you're inspired by and you like are an ultimate fan, express that. Send them a direct message. Send them a note on LinkedIn. What I really like about LinkedIn is that there's no gatekeepers. So when I worked as an assistant to some big VPs and different things as I was starting out, I was the gatekeeper. I would stop the phone calls from coming in their office. I would stop the mail from getting on their desk. I would stop the drop-ins from even accessing them. But with LinkedIn, those messages go straight to their phone if they have the phone app, which means that they're going to get a notification. And if you're like me, I check everything, because there's never going to be a time where I always know that there's going to be some sort of connection on LinkedIn that I need. And so find people that you're inspired by, reach out to them, say, I have this project, this portfolio, would you look it over? Is there a way for me to volunteer my time, even when it comes to businesses? Like, can I intern from you? Can I just show up? Do you have any work that I could be doing? Service is always what I really recommend to people. Stay creative. If there's something where you have a creative outlet. So I've really seen that this new generation so I'm considered a millennial, right? But the Generation Z is by nature, from what I've seen and from who I work with, content creators since birth. They do videos better than me. They do podcasts better than me. They know how to film on a camera way better than I know how to take a selfie. So these skills are skills that the millennials and the boomers and the other generations don't have. So use the skills that you have and pivot and offer what you have in exchange for experience of your muses.
Thanks. Hey, we've got a question for you. This is also an anonymous question. How have you handled pushback on your attempts to be innovative?
Wow.
When do you push your idea? When do you back down?
That's a tough one. It really depends on how much I have to lose. So there's times where I will contract just by project. And I've gotten really wise now. And I don't know if Caroline or Eric, you've noticed this too, but company culture is 100% influential in the type of work that I do. In job interviews or project interviews, I crack jokes to see if they have a sense of humor. I'm a very loud person by nature, as Matt is well aware of. When I come into a room, I'm going to be in a room. And I remember my first job, I got written up because my laughter was too loud. Well, I can't silence my laughter. It just, that I'm going to be there because of the laugh that I have. So I've tried as much as I can to have questions in interview form and different things to understand if the culture is conducive. Another question, and Caroline, I don't know if you see this a lot, is I try and test or ask people how innovative they are, try and find different ways of asking how much they're okay with emerging technology. Do they feel comfortable with risk taking? Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I'll have the best idea in the world, the best idea in the world, and I can't execute it because that's not what they're looking for. So I have a list, and I take those ideas and I put them on a piece of paper, and then I'll rework them. And then I'll either give that idea away as a service to a nonprofit, just so that I can get that experience seeing things through. For example, like a photo shoot idea or some sort of cause-related incident, or I'll stand down. But I think the thing is with the gig economy is that with us as consultants, they know who we are when we're hired. And if it's not a good fit, then contractually we can just at 6 months, we can move on and say, thank you so much for that experience. And in every experience, no matter if it's the most conservative team that I've worked with and, we butt heads, there's always something that I learn. Like there's always something that I can glean from. So I think that that's really important. It's just, like Caroline said, you're going to get fired from projects. You're going to lose your funding. There's times where, I'm living out of a backpack eating top ramen. And then there's times when, I'm invited to mansions and doing different things like that. You have to be really flexible.
Love that. Flexibility is key in a lot of things. Hey, Eric, this question is for you. So you sort of talked about the comparison between a big city and here locally, and how it isn't as competitive. But if you're a student and you're just coming into the workforce, you may not have a lot of comparison. So it may feel really competitive as a contract worker. And so the question from that point of view is, how do you stand out and gain a reputation to keep clients coming in and keep work coming in?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the sense of competition isn't meant to say competition for gigs. It's more the competition amongst the people seeking gigs, and that there's a friendly atmosphere around the realm of creatives in this community. So I want to definitely clarify that it doesn't mean that it's super easy to get jobs all the time. Lord knows I was very lucky to get into the job that I got into. And this is actually one of my suggestions that I would say is put your eggs in some baskets. For me, when I was going through my master's program, I graduated from the UO in nonprofit management. I saw 2 organizations that I really wanted to work for. It was Oregon Contemporary Theater and Lane Arts Council. And so I went out of my way and did everything I could to intersect, bump into, intern. I served on the board for Lane Arts Council. I did informational interviews with people on the staff. I attended every event that I could possibly attend, and I let them know that I was there. I did everything I could to just make sure they knew who I was, so that when the time came when I was graduating and the position that I'm in now came open, I was one of 2 candidates to the position who they actually knew before the application was in their hands. And I know for a fact, I have been told that is why I got the job, is because I knew the organization. And I think that's a really important thing. Is sometimes I think it's scary to put your eggs out, like put your eggs in the baskets and say like, okay, like I like you, I think you're a cool organization. I'm gonna to go up to the person putting on the event and say, hey, I just want to introduce myself. I'm so-and-so. Like, I love this event. I love the work that you do. I'd love to see how I can help out next time for the next event. I think that's one of the big ways is get known. Caroline mentioned that we are all 1 degree of separation. That is the truest statement that has ever been made. And there are limited positions for the type of work that you want to do. Like if you wanted to do arts education as like a coordinator of arts education programs, there's maybe 5 positions in the city that you could step into. However, once you get into that world, you are a sought after candidate for every organization that does arts education work. And not just as a sought after candidate for the job, but a sought after candidate for recommendations, a sought after candidate for insight and consultation, collaboration. And I can't tell you how many times people have reached out to me and said, do you know anyone that does XYZ? And I send them back 5 to 10 names every single time. I'm like, yes, here are the people in the community that I have talked to and that I would recommend for this experience. So even just getting your name known by somebody, even if the organization that you want doesn't have any opportunities, that person will say your name to another space in town and will get you an opportunity. Another thing that I want to say is build your portfolio. We talked about LinkedIn, we talked about Instagram, but like build your portfolio, especially as an artist. Know your brand, know exactly what type of service that you can provide, and build a brand that represents that well, whether that's a website or it's your Instagram or another means of communication. YouTube is another really great way to get things up there if you're a musician, dancer, theater artist, poet. Build your brand and let that be known, and tell everyone that you are an artist. You need to tell everyone. Don't be shy about it. It's a scary thing to do, but you need, every time you're anywhere, just be like, hi, my name's Eric Braman. I'm a poet and storyteller in town, and I also am an arts administrator. I love what you're doing here. If there's ever opportunities for me to be one of your performers, let me know. Here's my contact information. Are you on Facebook? Can I friend you? Like, do all the things and have that be a part of your title, one of the first things you say. There's a really good story actually around this. I work at a winery as well. That's another one of my jobs amongst the things that I do. And I had one of our members was coming in every single Friday, and she and I became very good friends, and I loved her. And then one day I mentioned Lane Arts Council. She's like, wait, you work for Lane Arts Council? And I was like, yeah, I'm the arts ed coordinator. And she's like, I'm the curriculum leader for the 4J school district. Why have we never met? And I was like, that's a great question. Made this connection. And now she's my #1 contact in the school for getting information out about all my programs and recruiting in the 4J school district. And we have known each other for almost a whole year. And it's because I wasn't telling her where my passions lie, to be able to make that connection to promote the work that I do. So always talk about yourself and own your identity as an artist or as a creator or as an innovator.
Thanks, Eric. Hey, Caroline, back to you. What are some early career opportunities for entrepreneurs? And what advice do you have for students who are interested in pursuing entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think whether it's entrepreneurship or any field, I think the people that I have hired who were easy hires for me were people who just did the job before they were hired. So some of the best hires I've had were someone who audited our website, who audited our Twitter page, sent me a 2-page report, said, here's what I would improve. Here's what I'm watching on by your competitors. Here's some sample tweets and posts that I would suggest using. This is free. This is for you out of love. But if you're ever hiring someone, I'm available for the next 6 months. You could pay me $4,000 a month. I don't know if you have it in your budget. If you have less, let's talk about it. But here, I mean, that's brilliant. You do the job before you're hired. And this is what's great. I think someone asked a question about what if you start in your career and you hate it, right? And then are you stuck in it forever? I think in my day, back when I first entered the workforce, I think the answer to that was probably yes, because we all felt like that was the culture of what was happening in the world, is like, oh, you go into retail, you're stuck in retail. You go into business or advertising, you're stuck in that field. But nowadays you can put on multiple hats at the same time. And I think if there's one word that you walked away with that I think dovetails nicely off of what Sarah and Eric and Holly and Matt were talking about here, it's hustle. And just own whatever it is that you want to do. Try out a YouTube channel. Just start filming yourself with, 1-minute quick videos about something just to try it out. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel weird, but who cares? You're just, working that comfort zone. You're going to feel that failure. You're going to see no one's sharing it. Who cares? That's the goal. Say, I'm just going to put it up and I don't want anybody to follow it. If they do, if you get 2, then it's a success, right? And so I do think that you should, so many people today wait until they get hired. They wait until they're searching for jobs, they're searching for gigs, and then they don't do the work until they get hired. And I always think the best way to stand out is the people who hustle and you do the job. And don't be afraid to, like Eric, I love that you said, just like own it. I'm an artist. Just ask for what you want, because most people don't ask. And most women get paid less than men. I mean, that gap is closing a little bit more and more. However, what research shows is that most men get paid more. There's a lot of reasons. There's patriarchy and so forth. But one of the major reasons is women don't ask. So ask for what you want.
Love it. Hey, Holly, let's kick off our 4th question, our 4th poll.
Yeah, so based on what you've been hearing today from our lovely panelists, do you feel like there are some skills that you see in yourself? Maybe you've got that hustle that they've been talking about, got hustle and grit, the things that we know are really important for the gig industry, that you could see yourself taking on these types of roles. We have a lot of confident people, which they should be, because if you're going to graduate from the U of O, you're going to have these skill sets. Like, that's what we train you to do. So I'm not surprised that everyone thinks that they would be great fits for this.
Love it. Yeah, that actually is the first time we've ever seen 100%.
It is true, yeah.
Which is a good thing. Hey, Caroline, back to you. This question is, my background, I'm not creative. I support creatives. I'm an IT support engineer. How can I find gigs in this environment? Any recommendations?
Yeah, first of all, if you're an IT person, you're creative. So let's get that clear. Right, Eric? I think that, when we think of creative, we think of, I mean, I know originally I thought of fine art because my father is an artist, he's a painter, but we're all creative in our own ways. So if you want to, again, was the question, how do you stand out if you're not a creative?
It's how do you find tech gigs right now? Maybe leaning into your background when you used to work in tech, right? Like before this, you were at Palo Alto Software, which is a big name here in Eugene in the tech community.
Yeah. So I was the VP of Sales and Biz Dev at Palo Alto, and then I also have been the CEO and co-founder of 2 tech companies. And I'm not a techie person. I don't write a line of code, but I was able to raise $1 million and sell a company. The first company failed, but that first company was basically Pinterest 3 years before Pinterest ever existed, but it was about pinning health and wellness products. So timing in your market is really important. I think if you want any kind of gig, it doesn't matter if it's tech, it doesn't matter if it's art, it doesn't matter if it's science, it doesn't matter what it is. I just can't emphasize enough that you just make your own job. So the fact that you're already here today, you're on this webinar, you are already ahead of so many other people at the U of O, then you know it. So first of all, just own that and know that that you already have a leg up, right? And I see the questions coming through. You guys are asking the right questions. And I want to make myself available as well. And I think, Matt, you're going to share our contact information, and Sarah's doing the thumbs up, and I'm sure Eric will too, that set up some informational interviews with us. Because here's the thing, you guys, you're graduating at a difficult time. These, unprecedented times with the economy. Most people are losing their jobs. Yes, we're reopening, but you're now having to compete with people who want to get their job back. And I see that as someone who's an entrepreneur, I see that as a challenge, and I say I accept it, right? Because now it's sort of a level playing field. Everybody's fighting for their jobs. So, and I don't mean this in a cruel way. I just mean make yourself stand out. You heard some tips today about getting your name out there. Join the local chamber, join in on the Young Professionals Network, get involved go to the First Friday Art Walk, make business cards for yourself, introduce yourself. It's uncomfortable. I always like to say, bring a buddy with you, because it's easier for me to introduce Eric and brag about him than it is for me to say, I'm Caroline, I'm this, I'm wonderful. But it's easy for me to say, Eric is awesome. Look at what he's done. He's done this, this, and this. Have you, tell us about what you've done. Ask people to brag about themselves. In our culture, we don't, it's considered, unladylike or rude to brag about yourself. But in this way, you're going to have to if you want to stand out. So if you want to get that job and do it before you get the job. If you want to know more about how to do that, let me know.
I appreciate, what is it? You've been my wing woman once before and said nice things about me in very important conversations. So
you're easy to talk about, Matt. You're easy to brag about.
Caroline really does what she talks about there. So, hey, Eric, I've got another question from the audience from you. Are the majority of creative opportunities moving towards the gig economy? Do traditional artists and creators have a place in Eugene Springfield's creative community?
Yes, 100%. There is, I think something that is sometimes I think forgotten is that art has been built in the gig economy since the beginning of art. Like art has never been a thing that it's like this industry that's being manufactured and shipped out and sold. It's, there might be some small spaces like that, but in the grand scheme of things, if you're an artist, you are in the gig economy. Think about any performer, it is based on performance to performance to performance. And if you're a visual artist, it's from sale to sale to sale. And it really, in so many ways, is dependent on festivals. It's dependent on being able to hang in galleries, getting your show up in a coffee shop, selling on literally having a booth set up on the corner during First Friday Art Walk. That all to me intersects with the gig economy. So my argument would be that arts is a form of gig work. It does look slightly different, than somebody being brought in to do graphic design, for example. That's a very specific task that they're being hired to do, and that's a different form of gig work. But in regards to, is it shifting toward like more gig-based work? It's hard to say, because there's also the reality that there's some laws that are shifting around gig economy, and specifically thinking about arts education. Oregon is watching California right now, because they've been looking at transitioning away from allowing contract workers to be arts education specialists. That if an organization like Lena Arts Council hires 45 artists to go into schools to do arts education, and one of our missions is to provide arts education programming, we may be required to hire them onto staff rather than having them in contract workers. So there are some laws that are out there that are kind of on the periphery of potentially shifting the whole field. That's in response to Uber and some of the stuff that was going on there with their gig workers, contract workers. But I think in the grand scheme of things, the creative sector is a gig sector because it's so dependent on the need in the moment, the response to community, response to time. And so I think I would encourage it to remain gig, because it gives more ownership to the artist rather than an artist being dictated by an organization on how to access and utilize their creativity. So I would say it's kind of a hard question to answer, because it feels like it always has been, and my hope is that it always will be in so many ways. With that being paired with more support to artists, such as healthcare and insurance and pieces like that, that can support those people who are working from that realm. So, yes.
Thanks, Eric. Hey, question for you, Sarah, and then we just got a few minutes left. Resume versus portfolio, which is more important?
Oh boy. Oh wow. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, it would have been my resume. Like I actually, I was so proud of my resume. My resume was like 4 pages long. Like it was like ultimate taboo. I had like every internship and every publication and everything on there, right? But I realized that there was not a single job that hired me based on my resume. So my first job, honestly, at the University of Oregon, I was hired because I was volunteering at the Honors College, and I met a trustee who advocated for me to have that position. My next job at the University of Oregon, I was at a gala giving a speech, and my boss was the one sitting next to me at the table. When I worked for the International Society for Technology and Education, it was through a temp agency. I literally had put my name, I was looking for a job, and I just applied everywhere. And it was just a blessing in disguise that I ended up where I ended up. And then LinkedIn is the place. So with the American Red Cross, I was recruited off of LinkedIn based off the geotagging and all of the keywords I had as talent. And then from there, everything else that I've done has either been because of somebody I knew, a job that I was passionate about, so I found an avenue for that job to work, or it was me sending somebody a message on LinkedIn. I have a great example of a woman who works in defense. She has a PhD in philosophy. She graduated with her PhD at the University of Oregon, but she runs her own think tank, her own DC-based think tank. This woman is like outrageously gifted. So of course, what do I do on LinkedIn? Tell her that she's outrageously gifted, right? Like I probably 7 exclamation marks. It was so embarrassing. She writes me back and says, do you realize that I have a house still in Eugene? Let's get together. And it opens so many doors for us talking about like projects and articles and different things that I could do for this think tank. And another project that I'm working on in Berlin was literally somebody that I was really inspired by. He was the former deputy director of communications for Amnesty International. He left that position to start his own consultancy and saw, because I'm a digital storyteller on LinkedIn, I post all the time. I either like, comment, or do some sort of post every day. And he saw that we had the same likes. And so just keeping with that brand and mission, I would say your digital presence, but not just the digital presence, how you interact on that digital presence will get you the job over your resume.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for all the students who joined us for the hour on this Onward Career Tour. Stay healthy, everybody.
See you guys.
Take care.